I wouldn't call it a miracle, exactly, Dr. Henderson told Streeter on Wednesday afternoon. But it was 2 days since Streeter had discussed matters of life and death under Mr. Elvid's yellow umbrella, and a day before the Streeters' weekly dinner with the Goodhues, this time to take place at the sprawling residence Streeter sometimes thought of as the house that Trash built. The conversation was taking place not in Drive Henderson's office, but in a small consultation room at Derry Home Hospital. Henderson had tried to discourage the MRI, telling Streeter that his insurance wouldn't cover it and the results were sure to be disappointing. Streeter had insisted. But what, Roddy? The tumors appear to have shrunk, and your lungs seem clear. I've never seen such a result, and neither have the 2 other docs I brought in to look at the images. More important, this is just between you and me. The MRI tech has never seen anything like it, and those are the guys I really trust. He thinks it's probably a computer malfunction in the machine itself. I feel good, though, Streeter said, which is why I asked for the test. Is that a malfunction? Are you vomiting? I have a couple of times, Streeter admitted, but I think that's the chemo. I'm calling a halt to it, by the way. Roddy Henderson frowned. That's very unwise. The unwise thing was starting it in the first place, my friend. You say? Sorry, Dave, the chances of you dying before you get a chance to say Happy Valentine's Day are in the 90th percentile, so we're going to fuck up the time you have left by filling you full of poison. You might feel worse if I injected you with sludge from Tom Goodhue's landfill, but probably not. And like a fool, I said okay. Henderson looked offended. Chemo is the last best hope for. Don't bullshit a bullshitter, Streeter said with a good-natured grin. He drew a deep breath that went all the way down to the bottom of his lungs. It felt wonderful. When the cancer's aggressive, chemo isn't for the patient. It's just an agony surcharge the patient pays so that when he's dead, the doctors and relatives can hug each other over the coffin and say, "We did everything we could." That's harsh, Henderson said. You know you're apt to relapse, don't you? Tell that to the tumors, Streeter said. The ones that are no longer there. Henderson looked at the images of deepest darkest Streeter that were still flicking past at 20-second intervals on the conference room's monitor and sighed. They were good pictures, even Streeter knew that, but they seemed to make his doctor unhappy. "Relax, Roddy." Streeter spoke gently, as he might once have spoken to May or Justin when a favorite toy got lost or broken. "Shit happens, sometimes miracles happen, too. I read it in the Reader's Digest. In my experience, one has never happened in an MRI tube." Henderson picked up a pen and tapped it against Streeter's file, which had fattened considerably over the last 3 months. "There's a first time for everything," Streeter said. Thursday evening in Derry, dusk of a summer night. The declining sun casting its red and dreamy rays over the 3 perfectly clipped, watered, and landscaped acres Tom Goodhue had the temerity to call the old backyard. Streeter sat in a lawn chair on the patio, listening to the rattle of plates and the laughter of Janet and Norma as they loaded the dishwasher. Yard? It's not a yard, it's a shopping channel fan's idea of heaven. There was even a fountain with a marble child standing in the middle of it. Somehow it was the bare-ass cherub, pissing, of course, that offended Streeter the most. He was sure it had been Norma's idea. She had gone back to college to get a liberal arts degree, and had half-assed classical pretensions. But still, to see such a thing here in the dying glow of a perfect Maine evening and know its presence was a result of Tom's garbage monopoly. And, speak of the devil, or the Elvid, if you like that better, Streeter thought, enter the garbage king himself, with the necks of 2 sweating bottles of Spotted Hen microbrew caught between the fingers of his left hand. Slim and erect in his open-throated Oxford shirt and faded jeans, his lean face perfectly lit by the sunset glow, Tom Goodhue looked like a model in a magazine beer ad. Streeter could even see the copy, "Live the good life, reach for a spotted hen." Thought you might like a fresh one, since your beautiful wife says she's driving. Thanks. Streeter took one of the bottles, tipped it to his lips, and drank. Pretentious or not, it was good. As Goodhue sat down, Jacob the football player came out with a plate of cheese and crackers. He was as broad-shouldered and handsome as Tom had been back in the day. Probably has cheerleaders crawling all over him, Streeter thought.